And this is Changing the Narrative. I'm your host, David Rives, and we are changing the narrative every day. We've been spoon-fed a narrative of chance, a narrative of atheism, a narrative of evolutionary principles that have overtaken society. We've been told things that are simply not scientifically true, things that are not factual, and it has not had the greatest benefit on society. In fact, it's hurt society in so many ways. But every week on this podcast, we are getting back to truth. We're changing that narrative back to truth. And with me today is a friend. Brian and Carla Estelle for years have been friends, but Carla, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is great to have you on the program to share just a little bit about your expertise on Mount St. Helens and some of the insights that it gave us. Now, Carla, you've been on one of my paleo digs in Kansas.
Yes, Kansas.
You have spent many hours volunteering for the Wonder Center for some exhibits that are on display that tens of thousands of people are walking through and enjoying and commenting on, and you've just been such a blessing. So thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Tell me just a little bit about yourself. You've got a degree from Liberty University.
Liberty, yes. Not in geology at all. It was actually psychology, counseling, and biology.
Okay.
Science was always a hobby, a love, so all my electives were science.
Yes.
And it ended up having enough to mix with the others.
But you developed a passion for geology.
Oh, yes.
How was it initially, were you attracted to that?
Initially, it was when teaching 5th and 6th grade. Yeah. And I would show Dr. Austin's film on Mount St. Helens.
Talking about
yes.
Dr. Steve Austin?
Dr. Steve Austin, yes. I'd have to stop it every 5 minutes to tell the kids, this is what he meant, this is what he said, because you definitely is not a 5th and 6th grade level. Yeah. But then I had always wanted to go see it for myself.
Absolutely.
But the tours were so expensive. It's like there was no way.
Where were you living at the time?
We were in Florida.
In Florida.
And Brian and I both taught at a Christian school. Okay. And so one day we got the idea, why don't we drive? Yeah. Why don't we just do a tour on our own?
No, wait a second. Florida and Washington State. That's about as far as you can get from one place to another.
And we tent camped the whole way. And we had scheduled 30 days for this trip. Okay. We had so much car trouble. Yeah. Oh, but God supplied needs. He got things fixed the whole way. But it ended up being 40 days and 40 nights.
Wow.
So we find that pretty interesting.
Almost we're studying in a way.
Yes, yes. So it was the pictures we took from that trip. So we didn't just see Mount St. Helens. We saw Yellowstone. We saw the Grand Canyon, Petrified Forest. It was one big loop. Yeah. Yeah. And so that kind of is what we now use in our ministry, is those pictures and those rocks.
So you threw your tent and supplies in the back of the
station wagon.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then every night you would try to find a place and then just set up, or
it was campgrounds.
Yes.
The whole way.
Yeah. But then you could kind of do tangents off from there to the different parks and see.
Well, it was pretty much you drive, you camp. You see something, you drive, you camp, you see something. Okay. Mount St. Helens, we spent 3 days at, which was nice.
Right, because you can't see it all in a day.
No. Grand Canyon, we scheduled 3 days at. Okay. But that was towards our end of our trip. Yeah. And our time had been eaten up. We had 45 minutes for the Grand Canyon. I was so disappointed. And we only saw the northern rim, so you couldn't even see the Colorado River. Right. And I said, well, Brian, let's just drive around and see the other side.
No time?
No.
Nope.
No.
You're looking at around
we enjoyed our 45
4 hours
minutes.
To, just get around
just
there.
to get around there, yeah.
Oh, so, wow.
Yeah.
What an experience.
That was before kids. Yeah. And then it was still a couple of years later before we had kids. Okay. So it was like,
But this was a huge adventure.
That was a huge adventure.
Okay. Yeah. What year?
Oh, Brian should be here. I think it was 95. No, it was 92.
92.
92. Okay. Because James was born in 95.
How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. When you're going to these different areas, whether it's the Grand Canyon, whether it's Mount St. Helens, whether it's Yellowstone, anytime you see geological formations, they're screaming out.
Millions of years.
Yeah.
They are. They are. In fact, the first time I went to the Grand Canyon, I was 13 years old on a family trip, and we watched that film.
It's such an agenda.
Millions of years ago, and the area was covered by a sea, and I said to myself, yeah, the sea was Noah's flood.
Right.
And surely the Bible tells us how old the earth is.
Yeah.
So as an 8th grader, I started, I'm going to read the Bible and hunt for dates. Took me 3 years, but you can hunt for dates.
Yeah, you can.
And find out how old the earth is. And then 10th grade, sitting in world history class, we learned about Usher.
Oh, yeah.
And how he had did the dates. And I thought, oh, man, it's already been done. I did all that work. But still, it was neat.
Doing it yourself.
You remember it.
You actually retain that, and it means something. It's like, okay, well, I can read that Usher has done chronology, and this is what he came up with.
Yeah.
But I know, because I've actually done the calculations myself, and wow, it really is there, and it doesn't equal up to these millions that are being screamed at us, that are being preached at us in all the state parks.
Right. And that's what I love about Mount St. Helens.
Yeah.
Because at Mount St. Helens, it's no theory, it's no model. It's like, this is what happened.
Okay.
You know.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because, you know, I wasn't even born when it took place.
Oh, that's right. You weren't.
I was, for quite a few years, I wasn't even born. Yeah. So let's break it down and tell the story. In 1980.
1980.
There was,
on a Sunday morning.
Okay.
At 8:30 in the morning.
Okay.
The roads were empty.
Yeah.
That's amazing. The forest was empty. And when that blast happened, it blasted out towards the empty forest.
Wow.
See, they were expecting lava, like it had always been lava in the past. Right. And you can see the lava flows. You can hike through Ape Cave, which is a lava tunnel.
Which is a huge lava tunnel. You're walking through this, and it's really cold down in there.
And it's dark, and it's long, and halfway through you wonder, is there really a way out? And then you hit the lava fall that you have to climb over. Yeah, it's an adventure all of its own.
Yeah.
But they were expecting lava. And it wasn't.
No lava.
It wasn't. It was that ash and blast and super hot water. And if it had gone another direction, towns would have been wiped out.
Right.
You know?
Many more people would have died.
To an empty forest.
Wow.
Which is amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. So it was all, I believe it was totally orchestrated by God.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's an interesting point you bring up, because, okay, so why would God orchestrate a volcano that actually did kill sevel people who wouldn't move out of the way?
Yeah.
But why would he do such a thing? I mean, a volcano. Why would he possibly want us to learn from a volcano?
Well, it wasn't just the volcano.
Okay.
It was a volcano covered with ice and snow, which quickly melted.
Yeah.
So it was also flood related. All these mud flows that went off the back of the volcano, and how quickly they carved canyons, how they left boulders in their wake.
Okay.
They did so much to show us this is what a mud flow can do.
Right.
And during the flood, there would have been so many more mud flows. It wasn't just water. Beneath the water was flowing mud, flowing sediment.
So that's what a lot of people don't get, is in the historical, again, it's an historical record of the flood. It says that the windows of heaven were open, but the fountains of the great deep broke open, right?
Right.
So in other words, there's tremendous amount of mud, sand, silts, and sediments that are washing over the continents in a soupy mix, with underwater mud flows taking place, and all of this catastrophism taking place, reshaping the continents, right?
The whole earth.
Right.
The earth was totally reshaped.
So Mount St. Helens took several pieces of what would have been going on during the flood.
Yes.
And through one volcanic event that happened 40 years ago, something like that, God showed us what a small-scale catastrophism looks like. And the damage that it can do.
Right. Right. And since that time, even secular science has now switched to catastrophism. They no longer talk uniformitarianism.
Right.
It is all, which actually kind of makes it harder, because it was easier to be catastrophe against uniformitarianism.
Yes.
But now we've got catastrophe versus oodles of catastrophes.
A bunch of catastrophes.
Right. Which is a lot harder to, say, no, it was one catastrophe. Yeah.
Well, it's harder in a way, but when you think about it, Carla, it's like for 100 years, uniformitarianism was preached. The idea that the present's the key to the past. Erosion takes place at a couple of centimeters a year, so therefore the Grand Canyon must have taken millions of years, right?
Right.
And then everybody noticed, well, if there's a meteor impact, it causes a lot of damage. If there's a volcano, that causes a lot of damage. If there's an earthquake, it causes a lot of damage. If there's a flood, it causes a lot of damage. If a dam breaks, it's a lot of damage, right? And they're like, well, all of this is taking place so quickly, it looks like catastrophism is the way to go. So let's just say that the uniformitarianists are correct in their dating assumptions that the Earth is billions of years old. Well, then after billions of years, there must have been a lot of little catastrophes that have added up to every geological formation that we see, right? That was where they started to head. But they're missing the single greatest historical, and one of the things that the most data is there for, historical event that ever took place, and that's the Great Flood of Noah's day.
Yes, yes.
So instead of a billion little catastrophes that add up to a lot of geologic change, in other words, there was one massive event that reshaped the world. How did that completely blow away the ideas of the billions and millions of years?
How did Mount St. Helens completely blow it away?
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, it showed how quickly different things can form. Okay. For instance, when there was the initial avalanche that rushed down the side of the mountain after the earthquake, a third of it went into Spirit Lake. Okay. And so it washed all these trees into Spirit Lake that are floating about. Even today, there is a huge log mat still on Spirit Lake. So for 40 years, but a lot of them have sunk. And the bark has all sunk. And Dr. Austin went scuba diving down under 10 years after the eruption and found out there is 3 feet of bark that has accumulated quickly on the bottom of Spirit Lake. Right. So bark is what turns into coal. Yes. Given not time, it rots. Okay. Given pressure and heat, it turns into coal.
So in other words, the right process will create coal in the matter of years, not millions of years.
Right. Wow. Right. And so all the coal beds that we find today, this is just bark that's been compressed during the flood.
Vegetation that was all stripped off during a much larger catastrophe.
Exactly. Okay. Because coal beds stretch clear across the country. Right. Yeah.
Ah, that's incredible.
Yeah. And then for the logs to still be floating is amazing. Yeah. You know, but a lot of the logs have sunk too. And the interesting thing, a lot of them, as they became waterlogged, they sank root first. So sitting on the bottom of Spirit Lake, you have these upright tree trunks that look like a forest once grew here. And it's not where the forest grew, it's where the forest sank. Yes. They have actually changed the sign at Yellowstone with their upright forest. Uh-huh. And now talk about a catastrophe bearing them all instead of multiple forests.
Because I've seen, polystrate trees.
Right, of course you have. Here in Tennessee. Yes.
And those trees are typically, you find them near coal seams, so where a lot of bark was stripped off, right? Right. A lot of vegetation was stripped off. And you typically, a lot of times you don't find them with their roots. It's as if they were sheared off, transported, and then set back down in the midst of a bunch of vegetation and bark and all that. Almost the exact same circumstances.
Exactly.
Wow. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so we're learning a lot from an event that took place just a few years ago that was documented, that we can still visit today and see those effects.
Date. Exactly.
Okay.
So that's the other thing Dr. Austin did. He hiked up into the new lava dome 10 years after the eruption. Okay. He took a sample of that rock. Yeah. Not telling the labs where he took it from.
Now, wait a second. This is part of the lava dome, so this is fresh 10-year-old rock.
It's 10-year-old rock. Okay. Right. Yeah. Now, from lava, they expect all the argon to be gone. Right. Because it leaks out. It's a gas. Okay. So they expect that when it turns into solid rock, the only argon that's there now has come from potassium. Potassium breaks down to the argon. Yeah. Okay. So they were expecting there shouldn't have been any argon in these rocks.
Sure. Okay. That should have all decayed away.
It should have all gone off, and then and there wouldn't have been time yet for new argon to form. Okay. Okay. So he sends it off to the labs, and it comes back 3 different samples, different types of crystals, came back with different dates.
Okay.
The oldest being 2 million years old.
What? Wait a second. Rock we saw form.
10-year-old rock was dated 2 million years old because there was argon in it.
Right.
So that destroyed their assumption that argon comes from potassium only.
Yes.
And that it all leaks out when it's melted lava.
Isn't that
so?
something?
It doesn't prove the Earth is young.
Okay.
But it does prove their dating methods or assumptions that the dating methods are built on.
Yeah.
Aren't real, aren't true.
Right.
So we can't date a rock and know for sure it's millions of years old.
And the radiometric dating methods, Carla, are one of the last bastions to try to prove that the Earth is billions of years old.
Right. Right.
And what we're seeing is that can't even be held as factual because it's based on so many assumptions.
Assumptions, right.
And those assumptions have been proven to be false. With research like Dr. Austin, Mount St. Helens research, and all of that.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so there are several different spots within Mount St. You brought a model. Can I see this?
Okay. I made this 23 years ago.
Okay.
That is the before the eruption.
And this is like a foot in
right, a foot by 6.
A foot by 6. Yeah. And you've got this area that is before the eruption. You can see all of the greenery. You can see a cone-shaped mountain that has not yet erupted. And then you've got Spirit Lake down there, it looks like.
Yes. Okay. And the little rivers.
And the rivers.
And the nice little rivers.
Okay, now what do we have here?
This one would be showing the eruption, but also 2 years later, because it does show the canyon that was formed 2 years later.
Okay. So all of a sudden, a ton of the forest has been denuded. It's gone. Spirit Lake is now filled with
floating
trees,
logs.
Right.
Yeah.
Not only is the mountain, the whole side of the mountain blown out, but I see mud flows and canyons and things like that.
Yes, there were so many mud flows that were released at the time of this eruption.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about some areas that most people, they think only a volcano. They don't think about the hummocks. They don't think about. Tell me about a few places.
Oh, okay. Well, this initial debris avalanche that happened, that triggered the whole thing. It filled the valley with 600 feet of brand new dirt.
Wow.
So the Toutle River Valley was a V-shaped valley.
Yeah.
And this mud flow came in and filled it up 600 feet. It turned it into a U.
Wow.
And it wasn't done by an ice age glacier.
No.
It was filled in by this avalanche. And this avalanche was pulverized rock. Okay. So there were still huge boulders, but it was also grit, sand.
Yeah.
And it was also glacier ice.
From
the
the top of the mountain.
From the top of the mountain.
Okay.
Yeah. I need to get a drink.
Oh, go for it. Yeah. Okay, so what we're seeing here is that we have multiple components all working together. The eruption that took place in 1980 was followed with a smaller eruption in 1982.
Right.
That caused something truly spectacular.
But we got to go back to that first initial landslide.
Okay.
Because what that landslide did, it was traveling so fast with so much energy, it put the debris in hills.
Okay.
And those hills are now frozen in spots, in place.
Yeah.
And those hills are full of boulders.
Okay.
Covered with boulders.
Okay.
And those hills are dotted with little ponds.
Yes.
And it looks just like Minnesota.
Yeah.
But miniature.
Right.
Because Mount St. Helens, it's all miniature.
Okay.
And where those little ponds came from is that glacier ice that rode down with all the debris.
Yeah.
When that ice melted,
it filled the low spots.
It filled the low spots. Right.
Okay.
And some of those little hills are actually like cut in half because when the ice melted, it fell in.
How about that?
So
and you can hike these today.
And you can hike these.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people don't.
Right.
Because it's a little side hike, and everybody wants to go see the volcano.
Yeah.
So everyone's headed out to Johnson's Ridge.
You're missing all the geology.
You do. You do. You do.
Okay.
So then, 2 years later, you have another mud flow.
Yeah.
And this mud flow carves through solid rock, a huge 600-foot canyon in one day.
Wow.
Step Canyon was carved in a day.
In one day?
In one day. And yeah, there's a little river that flows through it even still today.
Yeah.
But that river didn't carve the canyon.
No.
The mud flow quickly carved the canyon, and now the river just follows the course.
Because it's the lowest spot.
Right.
Wait a second. Let's think about this for a second. So if I go to the Grand Canyon and the park guide says, well, the Colorado River that you see at the bottom there, that carved it over 6 million years of slow erosion as a result of the river flowing through this area, and it ate the canyon down a mile deep over millions and millions of years. And then I go to Mount St. Helens today, and I see a canyon, which is how deep?
Well, the canyon on the mountainside is 600 feet deep.
600 feet deep.
600 feet.
But even as you keep going down, you see these layers of ash.
These layers of ash.
And there's a canyon.
Right, a canyon.
And you got water trickling down through there. And you're like, okay, so if I was looking at this and I didn't see it happen, I might go with the Grand Canyon answer.
Right.
And say, well, this water must have been flowing downhill for, you know, several 100,000 years. And obviously, it just kind of carved this area.
The canyon. Right.
But we know that's not the case because we saw it.
Yes.
We know the history.
Yes.
And it was a catastrophe that was formed in one day.
In one day.
Let's relate that back to the Grand Canyon. What if we knew the history?
Nobody saw the Grand Canyon.
Okay.
Yeah. But you know, the Grand Canyon looks so much like the Monterey Canyon off California. Have you compared?
I've seen photos. I've never actually hiked it. Yeah.
Well, it's underwater.
Yeah.
So you can't hike it. But they they've done a lot of videoing down there now, and it looks just like the Grand Canyon, and it's forming underwater today off the coast of California.
Okay,
and it's mud flows that have set off, and it changes. It changes the course. It looks different from year to year because the water is still there, and mud flows are still happening. But the Grand Canyon, the water drained away, carving a canyon, and now that water is gone.
Okay.
So the Grand Canyon
just left with a river that found its way to the lowest spot.
Right, exactly.
But you don't see, and we don't have a whole lot of time left, but let me just put it this way. You don't see the talus. You don't see the erosional material in the Grand Canyon.
Right.
It was all washed clear.
It was all washed away.
Okay.
Right.
So I guess what I'm getting at is, if we know the history of Mount St. Helens, we saw it a canyon carved in a day, and then the water found its way to the lowest spot. And then we look at the Grand Canyon and we say, well, this is just a scaled up version of this. Why would it not have been carved in the exact same way, or not in the exact same way, but through a catastrophe?
Right. Exactly.
Quickly, as opposed to 6 million years.
Again, it doesn't prove that it was carved the same way, but it shows that it could have been.
Interesting.
It could have been. So we really don't know. We need an eyewitness.
Yes, you need an eyewitness. Thankfully, we have an eyewitness.
We have yes.
The Creator himself actually wrote down, through the inspired Word of God, a collection of historical documents that are also prophetic documents, the gospel, there's science in there, there's all of that. And he told us that there was a great flood about 4,500 years ago that reshaped the planet. All right. We talked about your trip that inspired, you know, a lot of the things that you do today, because you speak about these issues. You have a website, Stone's True Story.
.org.
StonesTrueStory.org. And again, you're very passionate about this. Was it that initial trip that got you interested in Mount St. Helens?
It was. Now, I had already been teaching it to the kids. Okay. So I already knew about it.
Gotcha.
But actually, after that trip, Brian started taking seminary classes. Yeah. And every seminary was getting Genesis wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, allegory, it was totally. And so he said, you know, we've got slides. We've got these rocks, these fossils that we've collected. It's like, if the seminaries have it wrong, pastors haven't heard it correctly, and the congregations haven't heard it correctly. Why don't we do creation seminars?
Wow.
And so we started.
That's so neat.
At the time that we actually got started, our kids were 2 and a baby.
Okay.
And so, and then they did it through the years. As they grew up, they started singing the songs, doing the speeches. It became a family thing. Now it's back down to Brian and I. Our kids grew up. Yeah.
All right. You are changing the narrative because you are showing people how these geological events could have happened through catastrophism as opposed to the long ages, and how that fits. Not just stop there. Don't stop there. You're showing people how that fits with biblical chronology.
Yes.
And you're changing the narrative in the lives of so many people who walk through the Wonder Center, and we're in studio here at the Wonder Center, but because in the Wonders of Geology, you have contributed this massive, it's like a 7-foot long, would you call it a diorama? It's a diorama of sorts. Yeah. That is, and for those who are watching, it's like this, but could I say on steroids?
Yes, it's huge.
It is this accurate representation of where the different geological features are and what it looks like today. And you're showing us how all of that not just came to be, the lessons we can learn from it, and how we can trust God's word from beginning to end.
Yes.
Thank you, Carla, for being here and for sharing this with us today. And I look forward to having you back in the future to maybe
I'd love to
do some workshops on site in the Wonders of Geology.
That would be so cool.
Maybe we do a breakout session in one of the other rooms where you can do a demonstration, a hands-on demonstration, and show some of these remarkable things to many others in the future.
I'd like that. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining us on the podcast today, Changing the Narrative every week. Be sure to tell your friends and your family about this. Share this episode with others, whether you're watching on any of the major podcasting apps that have video or whether you're listening on any of the podcasting apps. Continue to tune in, to learn, to be inspired, to be encouraged every week as we teach you. You can trust God's word from beginning to end. I'm David Rives. Until next time, keep looking up, because truly the heavens declare the glory of God. Find us on all social platforms to stay informed. Watch Genesis Science Network 24/7 for free on Roku, Fire TV, and on our website. Visit the world's largest origins-based store, creationsuperstore.com. Plan your trip to the Wonders Center and Science Museum just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. Donate to our nonprofit ministry to help us continue sharing truth.